Hey, welcome to our podcast, Project Brightside, where we always look on the bright side, even when things are looking pretty dark. I'm Richard Brito,
And I'm Shelby Flohr.
and we're your hosts for today's episode.
Topics of discussion for our podcast include society and culture, education, and TV and film.
Each episode will have an interview of a guest speaker, followed by a Bright Talk segment where we discuss a complicated topic in hopes of shining light on it.
For today's episode, we'll be interviewing our Chief Music Officer. Hey, how are you doing?
I'm doing good.
Hello,
Good.
Jay.
Thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Well, yeah, thanks for having me here on the show.
Okay, Jake, so just to start off, just tell us a little bit about yourself. Who are you?
I'm a musician. I live in Mobile, Alabama. I'm a student of music, not literally a student, but someone who learns from being a musician.
Totally. Oh, you totally are, for sure. I like the descriptions that you're giving of yourself because it's like on brand, but very vague, and I love that. Which is
Yeah, it's a bit of a scary thing to just be like, this is what I am. You know, it's like, what's your resume? It's like, well, I could
So-
I could tell you my resume as part of who I am, but that seems a bit boring, you know.
You could tell us 3 to 7 core values, or as many core values as who define you, who you are.
Core values. So first core value is curiosity,
Okay.
because that's probably central to who I am. I like to experiment. I would say that aspiration
Yeah. Someone
is
that's
that a
like
value? I think that's
aspirational,
a
like aspiring and very like optimistic with like,
yeah.
yeah.
It's like trying to be in a state of becoming. I can't say that like strength is my value because there are times that I have weakness, you know.
Yeah, I feel like we all
Um,
do
so I
at
aspire
times.
to be strong. That's like one value that's pointing towards another one that's probably more of a maybe. So I'll put that strength as like a more of like a goal than a
And
than
it
a
can be
value.
something that's important to you. I feel like a core value can just be like something that you find you
Meaningful.
resonate with and that
Yeah.
you hope or you think is part of your identity.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's beautiful.
I Another core value I want to say the unknown. But that's a weird core value. But also it kind of goes hand in hand with curiosity
Yeah, yeah, the
because
vagueness.
yeah, and
Adventure.
as
Yes.
yeah, adventure. It's like aspiration. It's like there's a whole lot of uncertainty that I feel generally in the creative process. You gotta kind of nail things down in the dark.
Mm.
I
And then
love
when you
that.
finally turn the lights on after you finish the creation, you look at it and you're like, that, in the moment I didn't exactly know what I was doing, and now it looks like this. I think that's a pretty good metaphor.
Yeah. That was
So that's
beautiful.
at least three or four values. That's like three and then a maybe. And then
Yeah.
That's great.
I'm gonna do one more value just to give you some extras to stuff to chew on. Let's
Extra
see.
T.
Nice.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, there's also values that are like more personal and interpersonal, like dignity or honesty.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um,
I thought authenticity. I was hoping you would say something like that because I thought you're very
oh
authentic
yeah,
with who you are. And I love that. That it's who
it's
you
hard
are.
not to
And
be
yeah, especially, yeah,
because
I totally.
I'm so unsure of
Ugh.
like if I were to assert that I was something, it would almost be inauthentic because of the sort of uncertainty that I reside in. So I kind of just end up being whatever I am in the moment while I'm searching for the next rung of the ladder, so to speak.
Yeah.
Sure.
I like how metaphorical and like I could see visually like how you speak. It's very I don't know, I feel like I'm transported with your words a little bit. That
Artistic.
Excellent.
yes, yes, I love that.
Well, that's awesome. I guess kind of going off of that, you're kind of alluding to this big plan that's out there, kind of how vague the future can be. So this might be kind of a hard question to answer, but what do you really aspire to do in life?
Oh, well, funny enough, that's not as hard as you would think for me to answer because of the sheer stubbornness with which I have mapped my trajectory towards creating things. Like that is a vague statement, and it's also the same statement that a lot of people have nowadays. But it's also one of the like core values of humanity as a race, as a species. And it could
Yeah.
look like a lot of things. It could look like one thing I've had an idea for, which may never ever happen, is to create a talk show that is for people who are strictly not famous, just
What? You just
normal.
pitched right now. That's it. You just that's your pitch. Sold. Let's make it happen.
Yeah, it's like a talk show, and it's like intentionally really cheap and filmed in somebody's living room. But there is a desk, and there is a guest, and it is live to an audience of 3 people or something like that. You know, like
That sounds
that's an
cool.
idea. I could do
Yeah.
that, but also
Yeah.
I'm too busy to do that because I'm also trying to create music, and I'm
Yeah, I
also
mean
trying to
stages.
become a professional musician who can be hired by any band, but that's also time consuming and takes away from the creative aspect of music making. Like ideally, I make music, I make money doing it so that I can have time to make more music and also potentially music videos or other accessory artworks, you know. I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's valid. All of that is valid, and I totally agree. So we know that you're our chief music officer. So what other leadership experience have you had?
I'm not a leader until I'm like on a one-on-one level with a
Oh,
person. Like if you put me in a team of people, I don't have that much confidence for some reason to go and lead unless you literally put me out there and it's like sink or swim and I have to lead, then I can lead. Um,
yeah, that's
but I
survival
guess
though.
It's
So
important.
yeah, because I'm a teacher though, like that's when I feel like I can lead, like on a one-on-one level. It's like when it's especially on certain topics like music, I can lead a sort of collaboration to go a certain way. And sometimes I have no other choice but to lead it because of the absolute stickiness that my ideas have. Like I'm too committed. Like the ideas are born before I even have them, and then it's hard to change them. So it can be even difficult sometimes to like that. I guess it just forces me to lead at times, which is sometimes a flaw in a sense.
no, I think it could be a strength too. Whenever you're
Yeah,
put in these situations that you have to be a leader and you have no other choice but to do it and you perform and you're able to. So that's a strength.
yeah.
Um,
The reason I'm not a leader is because once I have the power to lead, it has to be a certain way. So a lot of times it's easier for me to default to a different leader who is less picky, but also it creates internal dilemmas within myself.
Well, kind of
I
going
don't know.
off of
That's
that, can you tell us more about your leadership philosophy and style? I know you're saying you don't lead often, but it sounds like you lead a little bit more than you think if your role as a teacher and, you're part of a band that takes leadership and multiple people.
yeah. Well, bands are funny because there's a lot of egos. So there's always a leader in a band, even if it's not the most well-equipped person. And a lot of times, you know, I'm a musician. I have an ego. I think I'm probably the most well-equipped person to lead a band in a decent amount of situations,
Uh-huh.
unless it is like clear that I have someone who is takes seniority in terms of experience and skill, and then I completely default to their opinion and then try and learn as much as I can from them. But
Yeah, kind of
because
learning
of
is important
the
for sure.
difficulties of egos coexisting, it's like I want to lead, but sometimes if I lead, I hurt people's feelings.
How do you
so
get around
hmm?
those egos? Like, how does someone be a good leader in that kind of environment? What kind of tools have you noticed yourself or other people using?
Well, I certainly have a lot to learn from other leaders who are good. The person who I think is the best leader in a musical situation, it's probably trust for each of the members of the band to
Mm,
make the best possible decision.
yeah.
I agree. I totally think that trust it goes into our next question, which was like, what are the keys to success? And I think trust is definitely a key.
Oh, I don't have the keys to success.
I'm Jake here.
None of us really do.
If
Oh,
anyone out there has the keys to success, my mailing address is
you're so funny. What challenges have you faced in the past as a leader?
as a leader. Well,
Like in the
we've kind of
band situations and as teaching, like what are some challenges that you face?
we've kind of touched on it a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, for example, the ego problem.
Yeah.
My biggest challenge as a leader is having the self-confidence to lead.
Mm.
Because there's a weird thing where it's like I think I'm the most qualified person, but also I am somehow the least qualified because if you're a leader and you don't have confidence, you're not a leader. You're failing.
I don't know if that, I think you'd be surprised how many leaders don't feel confident in their position, but are still leading effectively.
Internally. uh,
Ah,
yeah.
that's
Like
that's
I've
part of the problem is maybe I wear it on my sleeve too much.
Hmm.
Yeah, like there are many times that I'm like, whoa, all this pressure's on me, and they're all looking at me like to spearhead, but I have to like exude this like like strength and obviously like communicate if I don't know something, I will investigate and I go to someone higher than me, like my mentors, like
Mm.
Dr. Carlos Reyes Ortiz or whatever, whoever it is that is an expert in that or could help me with that. Like for instance, with you, with one-on-ones, I've learned so much just from like seeing you teach other people or talking to them and teaching them music and really making it all make sense. You're really good at that. One of the beauties of like music and art and what you're doing is that I think self-actualization is like a part of you could achieve that with like creation once you're able to create, once you're able to really connect with yourself artistically, that's when you're like flourishing the most. I mean, there people could art and music, and there are many ways to express yourself artistically. But whatever like floats your boat, like that is what I think is like really cool, and you're sort of a bridge for people to find that, and that's what you've been, and I've grown throughout the years just like by seeing you. So
Oh, I appreciate that. There's also things that I've definitely learned just by watching you sort of put this entire Brightside thing together. Because I think you're a good leader because you just have the audacity to create a large group of people producing things, which is like having that audacity is good, you know.
thank
Like
you.
like you've never made a TV show before, and it's like let's just make a TV show like that. That requires like some confidence, and even in the face of the fact that you have nothing to show for your abilities to make a TV show, but of course you can't, you know, you'll never enter the market for that kind of work unless you have the audacity to just do it
I
for the
really
first
appreciate
time.
you. That's very sweet. Thank you so much for saying that, Jake.
Yeah. And also the fact that you do, default to people who have authority on subjects that you are not as well versed on is another good attribute of a leader.
Thank you
I
so
think
much.
that's something
Yeah.
that I could learn from is like getting humbled and like, obviously I have my realm of expertise, which is music.
Hmm.
But within that realm, I need to figure out things that I suck at and give it to other people when I'm working with other people who have different skill sets.
Yeah, this is like really good
Um,
advice. And thank you so much for saying that because like a lot of people could learn from this and it could help them a lot. Like just hearing you say it, it warms my heart and it reassures me that we're doing the right thing. And it's good to be bold. It's good to have that audacity because you're expressing yourself. You're trying your best to accomplish your dreams. And if you don't make it, you try again. And that's a part of life. And I'm very grateful to have all of you and to have the team to work together and make our dreams come true. Because seeing like literally the team be successful individually and as a whole, that's what really matters to me, and it makes me happy, and it's a part of my happiness. So I definitely want to see everyone elevate and to see everyone like prosper and just like have the life that they deserve. So I'm really I feel blessed. So thank you for doing this, and thank you for saying that.
No, that's
So I
yeah.
awesome.
think we've mentioned costs and benefits within our conversation naturally, so no need to ask. But I do want to wrap this up. The interview aspect of this conversation was with the next question is, what advice would you offer to others who are seeking to develop their leadership or experience with one-on-ones or band situations where they're able to uh, develop themselves?
Okay. Well, the advice that I would give is the same advice that I would give and will give myself at this moment, which is to simply do the things that you want to do. And then the most likely scenario that results from that is that you learn how to do them while you do them. And then the next time you do them, you have more experience. I think experience is probably the most important thing. And the biggest thing that gets in the way of experience from happening is a fear of what could go wrong in the event that you do it and it sucks, which is something that I personally feel still um, to this day. Uh,
I'm really
I
proud of your authenticity.
Yeah, I had this saying that I always say, never think, only do, and that's the way you truly think. That was my mantra when I started writing music because I would think and I would think and I would never write a song.
Mm,
And then it was like I was overthinking it, and thinking just was just another way of me saying, "Oh, I'm just fearing
yeah.
sucking," basically. I'm just afraid of sucking. Obviously, if I do it and it sucks, I can't help it, so I might as well just do it. And eventually, I started making songs and intentionally making them suck just so that it would happen. And it turns out they didn't suck that bad. They did suck, but they didn't suck that bad.
I think you're not giving yourself enough credit. I think that takes a lot of confidence and a lot
Yeah.
of willpower to kind of go through and just say, hey, you know what, I need to write it and kind of see what happens. And I think that's really natural for a lot of people is to, it's kind of like a form of anxiety almost of trying to like plan and plan and plan and think of different things and whether it's planning a song or planning a speech or planning how a conversation's going to go. But if we don't actually do it, we can't learn from it. And we also don't know the outcome. So I think that's awesome that you're able to get that started.
Yeah, like all of this has been super, super wise. And Jake, you've made so much music and it has been quality music. So not only have you done quantity, you've done quality. So like you should be really, really proud of yourself because I think you're the smartest person in the room when it comes to music.
Mhm.
And I think you yourself have thought that or maybe have seen that. And if you have thought it and seen it and others have said it to you, I think it must be truth. So,
Well, thank you.
we
Oh,
could go ahead and start our Bright Talk section, which is actually a really small, cute questions about music, which is really cute.
fun. Okay.
Interesting.
For our next segment, Bright Talk, where we discuss complicated topics in hopes of shining light on the matter. This week we'll be discussing music.
So,
All
Jake,
right.
what is your favorite decade of music and why?
Favorite decade? That's just not fair. That's like asking me to like pick one person in a group of 10 people to live and kill the rest of them, you know?
Okay, okay, give me five. Give me five. That's a good
That's
middle.
Okay,
so
well,
many
I'll just
decades. That's a cop out. No, you
Okay,
cannot
no,
okay.
pick
here
five.
Three.
I'll speak on a decade that comes to mind, and
Okay,
it's
One
not
of
gonna
your
be
favorites.
my favorite. It's just gonna be the one I want to talk about probably.
okay.
Decades of music. Gosh, I mean, there's something significant that happens in every decade that would warrant it being somebody's quote unquote favorite. I mean, I almost said the late 90s just to even limit it
Oh,
to
that's when I
less than
was
a decade.
born. Yeah,
Same
that's when
Yeah, because
choice.
I mean, if you look at the decades, it's like 1979. Oh my gosh, we're about to hit like new wave. We're about to hit synthesizers. You can almost tell. We've got disco music. Hip hop is about to break into the popular ear. But if you look at 1971, blues rock just hit its epoch, and now it's you know starting to go away. And it's like it's a whole different decade, even though it's still the 70s. I guess I'm gonna pick the 70s right now. I guess that's the
okay.
real answer.
Okay, I like that. I
Yeah.
like that. When I asked you the question, I thought he's gonna say 60s or 70. That's what I just thought. And then
Really?
yeah. So I'm glad you
Yeah, and I
did.
I do love the stylistic elements of 60s pop and 70s pop, but I guess the reason I'm picking the 70s is not even about the music. It's more about how much music changed during that decade
Yeah,
from the beginning
totally.
to the end. Same can be said for the early 2000s too. Like the early 2000s is kind of weird, and then the late 2000s is so different. It's like it's also weird far ends of the spectrum of each decade. I wonder what would happen if we erased all the decade markers and like divided all of music into like just 5 parts, you know, or 100 parts. So
Whoa.
instead of like 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, it was like area 1, 2, 3, 4, and it was like they were 4 year intervals, you know, and it was like that you could look at the music differently that way, I bet.
Yeah, so like the origination of like the music practice and just like sounds
Yeah.
and making rhythm and yeah, I would love to like learn more about that for sure.
Yeah. Divide all time up into like college degree sections, you know, it's like four, just 4 years. It's like, okay, somebody got their degree here, so how much can change in 4 years?
Yeah, that's a good way of
I guess
looking.
that answers the question. I don't.
Yeah, yeah,
It
totally.
definitely does. It definitely does. So I guess kind of moving forward from there, and I know we've spoken a little bit, well, a lot a bit about your, music journey currently and where you're hoping to go. How did your journey with music actually begin?
I was in a church. I saw a trumpet, and for some reason, I couldn't take my eyes off of it. And it was heralding beauty into this giant church, and it was filling the place with this reverb. And it was beautiful. Then that same period of time, I saw a guitar player on a marching band, and I couldn't take my eyes off him. He had an amplifier on a football field. For some reason, there was a guitar player. And I thought that was so cool.
That's awesome.
No,
And
totally.
so
It's
that
different
year, I
approach.
played trumpet and guitar. I picked them both up. My mother got
That's
me a
cool. Those are
trumpet.
very different instruments. That's awesome.
Yeah, and so it's kind of been this weird dichotomy of like playing one note at a time and then playing 6 notes at a time and then playing one note at a time on 6 different strings. It's pretty weird.
I mean, the fact that you started with two instruments and then like that itself is a lot of confidence to teach yourself.
Yeah, the nice thing was I didn't even know it was difficult, you know, or well, luckily I didn't even discover difficulty in doing these things. I just did them and then I got better at them. It was never a matter of like this is gonna be hard. Like the fear didn't exist because I was so young, which is a very good thing. Probably the
Yeah,
best thing that you have when you start doing something at a young age.
removing the
Except for
fear.
I do teach some kids who are scared of sucking, and it makes me wonder what happened to them that makes them scared of sucking.
Hmm.
Something happened to them, like they have a parents that instill that fear in them. Probably not to their fault, but they just it's probably so ingrained in their parents that they can't help but exude this same fear to their children.
And something that's very important when like trying to learn art and music and practicing it is to engage in mindfulness. So like mindfulness is not accepting the truth but not having judgment placed on it. So if it really sucks and you don't like it, don't judge yourself. Just be proud of yourself for how far you got and then just improve upon it. And it takes time. Sometimes, if you spent like 12 hours on it and you're super worn out, you want to just stop it all and forget about it. That's a temporary mindset from exhaustion. Stop, take a break, uh, and try another day on a fresh mind after, restful sleep. And when you remove that judgment and that fear, that's when you could really flourish. And I'm glad like you've started since such a young age and then just kept going and like did it for yourself. Because look how good you've gotten. And you're able to express yourself in so many ways. So,
That's awesome.
what styles and forms of music speak to you as an artist and why?
I have to go back to your previous statement for just a moment.
Okay.
There's a book by Kenny Werner called Effortless Mastery that touches on aspects of meditation through music. But the subject is not even about the meditation. It's more like meditation is being used as a tool to get out of your own way in the process of learning music. So it's like we're gonna like Mario eats the mushroom, you know, and then he like trips or whatever, and then he's more powerful. It's like that, except the mushroom is uh a lack. It's mindfulness. Mindfulness is Mario's mushroom.
Yes, I love that.
Yeah.
I love your metaphors. I'm
I will
I'm I
think
love it.
one thing I was gonna add on, and we don't have to, running out of time, but just gonna say I feel like a lot of people, and a lot of people who like especially want to achieve big things or have big dreams have this like big anxiety and tend to be really hard on themselves. And that's something that I definitely struggle with as well. And I feel like even though it's kind of embarrassing, I literally will just like say to myself, because like I'll just I don't know, I kind of like get in my head about like failures and stuff, and I'll literally just be like, just be better. Just be better. It's fine. Just be better. And even though that's kind of silly, I feel like it sincerely kind of works. Like instead of like sitting there and reflecting like forever on what happened or like what I could have done better, once I acknowledge that, I'm just like, okay, just go forward and be better than you were that day. Be
Yeah, and like you're super, super talented, and sometimes we're our own worst critics. Like we beat ourselves up the most because we might be perfectionists or we might be aspiring for like this level of um eliteness, but we already are, and failure is always going to be a part of it. So we can't we could look at the darkness, but we can't like stare at it.
better.
I think RuPaul says that. So
I
I
like
quote
that.
that. Yeah. Um
That's
it
a very brilliant piece of advice from RuPaul.
Mhm.
I love it. And he just brings out so much joy, and he's honestly one of my role models, like figure wise, like celebrities. And Viola Davis too. Like those two public figures have always been inspirational for me. But um I'm curious, moving on to some influential people that might impact your artistry. Like, do you know or any personal or public figures that have impacted you artistically, and any styles or forms of music that come along with that?
This is a difficult question. And
Yeah, it was a
also,
merger.
yeah, it kind of comes into the realm of like almost a taboo of sorts. It's like, do I express? Do I tell the secrets of my I will say it's no secret that, living in Mobile, Alabama and being surrounded by brass bands and Mardi Gras and jazz music and Black American music and this like really fascinating culture that erupted in the South, in the American South, like that sort of, you know, Black American music, the jazz music thing is inescapable for me. It's been a love that I've had since I was very young. And that's, the city itself has taught me so much about it.
I love that. I totally agree with
It's
that.
really deep. It's American. It's like American culture.
Yeah,
It couldn't have
yeah,
existed anywhere else, really. It's
yeah.
it's it's a very beautiful tradition, and it is like it is a tradition. And sometimes it's like people look at jazz or Black American music and they're like, oh, this is too traditional in a sense. But it's almost like there's a traditional side to it, but there's also this like sort of thread that can be followed all the way through history into the modern day. And it touches everything that happens in American culture in a sense. Like Louis Armstrong, I was listening to the Dick Cavett show. It happened in maybe the early 70s, and Louis Armstrong was on there, and he was talking about the 80s. He was born in 1900, and he was talking about the 80s, and the 80s didn't happen yet. So he
Hmm.
was actually talking about the 1880s, which is
Mm,
only 20 years after the Emancipation.
Hmm.
And he's talking about playing with King Louis in New Orleans, and it's like it's all so fresh. And then it finally dawned on me why Louis Armstrong has been such a crazy symbol for American music, because he was a living legend. Like he's about the closest that we get to like true folk music that was happening prior to the invention of any recorded music. He was making the first recordings ever.
yeah, yeah, and that's something that's like overlooked throughout history or masked. Uh, and I think Beyonce is like trying to make that like brought to attention. For instance, like rock, country, house, like that's been the rumor that she's sort of been revisiting these genres, where not revisiting, but exploring these genres that she's never really ventured onto, but she's trying to prove a point that Black Americans, Black people have created this music from the very start. And people share and learn from one another, and putting people in boxes is not really like a good thing, and it should be embraced, like music should just be practiced by all.
It's my when I make music like that really comes from my heart. It's genreless muck, but it's kind of like poppy. It's like
Hmm.
poppy genreless muck. But then if I get pissed off, I'll make something that sounds absolutely horrible and no one would want to listen to it. That's like screaming into a tape machine that I love to do. I love to do that. And I don't know what I mean, I guess that's like noise rock or like
I bet
lo-fi
you
or
someone would like it.
Yeah,
yeah.
there's a whole screamo, like a not genre but section of music that like people
Hey,
love
hey,
to.
is that a category? Is that a
Sorry.
box? Hey,
I didn't know how to describe it.
Yeah,
But
no,
yeah.
see, I just end up there though. I don't think about it. I'm not like I'm gonna make a screamo song. It's more like I
What
have this
comes out?
visceral feeling that can't escape.
Yes, I totally
Yeah.
agree, and
But
sort of
yeah, it
that.
does end up in a category of sorts that you can sort of like sift through as a consumer and pick your favorites. But also it almost prevents the people who are listening to and ingesting the music from breaking the barriers. They have to then break it themselves, and it makes it a little bit harder for someone who really likes hip hop to go and get into some like country music or classical music, or it gets to the same for like someone who listens to pop music to go back and listen to like late 60s R&B. Like,
Mm.
I love the
but also
fluctuation.
I'm a history freak. I love history, and there's not enough history taught in schools or in conversations. I love history so
That's
dearly.
awesome. This has been super insightful. I feel like you're extremely knowledgeable, which makes sense based on
It's my
questions.
secret.
Yeah,
No,
and
that's
thank you so
awesome.
much for sharing that secret. So to wrap this up, what role does music play in our society?
It
From
is a
Mhm.
symbiotic reflection of things that happen. And unfortunately for America, right now, that means consumerism, consumerism, consumerism. We want to be famous. We want to get money. We want to get bitches. Like a lot of people are out there trying, and they're just people who haven't learned all of the many thousands of faces that the human emotions can have and be expressed through music. And it's the fault of the people who are curating all of the things and trying to milk the money from all the people. And it's the same thing how artists are now a product, and they're giving their money to Spotify basically to be put on Spotify to be out there. So it's like they're making money off people who are listening to music. They're making money off people who are producing music, and it's the shining star of human creativity and art. It's really dangerous to put that anywhere near any of the sort of like greed or lust or any of the sort of like sinful things, just to use the sort of Christian analysis of sin. Like it could be a myriad of other things, but I'd like to use that just because it's almost like you just have billboards out in the universe with all these like things that humanity has generally looked and frowned upon for all of history. Just Christianity being an old and very important thing that happened to humanity. I like to take those values and sort of like see them in the world.
Yeah,
um
I feel
it's
like
it's kind of crazy. There's some truth to like my favorite part about Christianity is the seven deadly sins because it's just so blaringly obvious that those things are just out there. They're traps, they're temptations. It's very true.
yeah, and I could see your perspective, like the validity of it, because music, y- it could be used for wrong and ne toxic and negative perspectives to like be capitalistic, but then music could also have really good, profound impacts where it's a spiritual awakening with lyrical or instrumental,
Oh
connections that
yeah.
you bond with. So,
Oh my gosh. You just reminded me of an artist. This is the guy that's inspired me recently. His name is Cooper B. Handy. And he's just some dude from Massachusetts. And he makes this like all I can describe it as it's the most pure, desperately passionate, naive creativity that I've ever heard. And he just puts out album after album of these sort of like records of longing for like I don't even know what he's longing for, but it just feels like he's longing for like an understanding or to communicate his appreciation for life. Like I think that's what I like about it is that he's so desperate to communicate these ideas and it like I saw him play live opening for King Cruel and it was like I couldn't tell if he sucked. You know, I was like looking around, I was like, this guy's really opening for King Cruel. And like by the end of his 45-minute set, I like I think back on that and I think Cooper B. Handy, King Cruel was great. I love King Cruel, but Cooper B. Handy, if I didn't see that concert, my life would be so different. That guy is an example of someone out there today who is doing my favorite thing ever. And it's
Aw.
crazy because he's got so few views on the internet. Like it's not really a meritocracy out there, you know, like you can, you know, pay money for marketing and get your stuff out there. And it's like, but Cooper B. Handy and like these like underground artists that I meet, like I meet people in real life who I think are worthy of like national attention, you know?
Yeah, and
But
we
they don't even want
totally
it, you know?
agree with that. We think that well, at least I think that uh the Brightside Productions, I'm sure a lot of people have said this too. The Brightside Productions is all about like making sure that we're not like milking people, that we're actually like having them express themselves, learn, have it be a journey. We're not really in it for the money. We're like musically, like we're because realistically speaking, if you look at how much money could be made from Spotify and how much money could be made from Apple Music and who's taking the majority of those streams, and you compare all that, there's not much money to make. And unless you have like this extreme luck or thousands and thousands of resources. But it's
Yeah,
all
it's
about the
almost
art, it's about the passion, it's about the
yeah, that's it.
expression. Yep.
I
So
was about to say it's almost a good thing because now people have to do it for their
yeah,
passion.
yeah,
They,
exactly.
if it was easy money, everybody would be pumping out, you know, track after track of like garbage just to get a dollar, you know.
Yeah. I really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for such an insightful interview and Bright Talk segment. It was really great having you on. For our next episode, we will be interviewing our Chief Research Officer, Zoe Rushetsky, and having a Bright Talk segment with her. Thank you so much for tuning in. Until next time, take care.
Episode 5 was executive produced by Richard Brito, Shelby Flohr, Jake Riossi, Luke Riossi, Andres Seguel Arana, Zoe Rosetsky, John Scrivenich, and Sophia Paez. Music by Jake Riossi. Edited by Luke Riossi and Richard Brito.